Hello and welcome to the Made Creative Podcast.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. This is episode 6. Welcome. My name is Sam. With me, as always, is Connor.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And today, it's just the two of us.
Just the two of us today.
You know, we thought, everyone else is great, but we're the best part of this podcast.
I'm here too, guys.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Joel
Sorry,
is
Joel's here as well.
We just didn't want to put a camera on him. Just got to keep him in his place because we're the main attraction.
I mean, we wouldn't give our old sound guy a microphone, no way.
We did once.
Oh, we did once there. That was... Yeah.
But that's okay.
That's okay.
Anyway, so, it's just us two today, and we're going to have a chat about a couple of things. But firstly, it's been 6 months.
That's right. Episode 6 means 6 months of stuff.
6 months of doing videos.
It doesn't feel like 6 months.
It does not, and yet it does.
Yeah.
How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. I feel really good. Some of our videos are the first video, Heavenly Love, when it came out, I was like, I want to see sort of how it goes. And I'm like, it's up to 800 views. And I was like, I don't know, for someone who hasn't had had zero experience in YouTube, and they see like a video, like actually there's lots of people watching and enjoying it, and like you being the actual content of the video, like it's like a song we wrote, and it just climbed up the ranks, and it's nearly 800. It's like 790, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, it's real close.
So
same was wrong with him. It's like 490 at the moment, which
that's
is just phenomenal.
Awesome. That's really awesome. So thank you guys for watching. Actually, it's awesome. Especially, I know there's a couple of people out there who rewatch it, and that's really cool. To me, that's proper care.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's really cool, and it's kind of really cool that, you've heard them acoustic. We've now got the raw recordings of.
Man, it's so good.
Of it with full band, and it's like, oh my gosh. I cannot wait to... It's very frustrating to be sitting on something for so long.
Yeah, that's right.
Going like, I cannot wait for other people to hear this.
Yeah.
I
mean, I liked the small little, the little extra things we did, like doing harmonies was really fun.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for everyone to hear it, but...
Yeah. We're 2 weeks out now from our second batch of recording for the second half of the album.
Yep.
How are you feeling about that coming off the first half?
I think really good. I think we've got a bunch of really good songs. I mean, one of them, Our King, is awesome. It's so much fun. We're always at the beginning of the practice, we're just going to do this once and then we move on. And then we end up playing it like 3 or 4 times. So
it's everything I dreamed of when we wrote the song. There's one specific thing we do in that song, which I'm not going to spoil because it's be fun when you guys hear it. But there's one specific thing that when we wrote that song, I went, we're going to do that. And to hear it,
I mean, most of you guys won't have heard this song yet because it won't be out. It's not out just yet, but it's really fun. It's just a fun song. It'll be probably less energetic with it, just acoustically, but it's still a really great song. Lyrically, and it's just like a fun song to play. But we are going to really be talking today about public speaking and writing a sermon and writing a message. Now, Sam has a lot more experience in that than I do. I've got a little bit of public speaking experience. So I'm going to hit it off to you. What is writing a sermon?
Oh my goodness.
It's a little bit deep question.
Yeah, what is writing a sermon? I guess the way that I see writing a message or a sermon or preaching in any sort of way, there's a couple of different things that are a part of that whole process, but I see it as a story you're telling, whether it's, whether you're teaching someone something or telling a story specifically as part of the message or whatever it is, you're trying to get from A to B and communicate some truth about God or some truth about who he is in relation to you. And that's kind of what I see it as and how I write.
Yeah, cool. I guess when it comes from the Bible, right? You have to sort of transfer that meaning and what you get from that passage. And I imagine that can be quite challenging.
It can be, especially because, and this is a mistake a lot of people make, especially when they start out, is you have so many thoughts.
Sure.
And you really only have maybe 2 or 3 max points that you can make.
Before it sort of becomes a bit too much.
Yeah, before it becomes too much and people don't take in that much information. So you spend heaps of time poring over this thing and thinking it through and going, oh my gosh, this connects here and all this sort of stuff. And what happens is you tend to jump over important details.
Right.
Because you go to the end and you forget the process of how you get
right,
there.
Okay. So you sort of got to as you go along, you got to link it back to your first point, and you got to make sure that it stays on track as it goes along.
Just like logically go through it. And that's why I like to think of it as a story, because a story only makes sense when you tell the parts.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you can't just tell the
ending. You can't just jump to the end.
Yeah, you've got to bring people along the way. That's what a good story is.
And I like that analogy. That's good.
That's why, it's something that people can get wrong a lot of the times, because they get so excited by the end product that that's all they want to talk about.
Sure.
And nobody else has looked at it that way yet. So you've got to bring them along that journey.
So the public speaking side of it.
Yep.
So actually standing in front of people, like let's say a church, and actually delivering a sermon.
Yep.
Do you find that is, say, speaking in front of your church is more intimidating or different than, just speaking in front of like a group of, like maybe say your youth group or something like that? Or is it kind of all the same?
It's kind of all the same to me, really, in a lot of ways. The actual public speaking, I never really fret too much about.
Sure.
When I first started preaching, I would practice and practice and practice the message over and over again. And it would feel really quite different when you were doing it at a church. Nowadays, it doesn't feel that different, and it's not that much of a challenge. And a lot of that's to do with, like, I did drama all through high school. So
So doing stuff in front of people.
And doing stuff in front of people in that way is not, learning lines is not a big deal for me, because I did it all through high school.
Yeah, cool.
So that side of things is easier than the writing part for me personally. Yeah.
So is there any other challenges you would say? What's something that really challenges you about public speaking? It's probably a better way to phrase that question.
Public speaking or preaching in general?
I say preaching in general.
Okay. So I guess the way I think about preaching is there's three main parts to it, right? There's the biblical work, or the exegesis is what it's called. There's the writing. So they're actually forming it and structuring it and all that sort of stuff. And then there's the actual preaching. And within that, there's a multitude of things you need to do. It's like a highly skill-based thing to do, because there's multiple different areas in which you have to do well.
Yeah, okay.
So for me, the hardest thing that I find is the physical writing it down.
Right.
Not even the structuring it and putting it together. It's literally just the writing it down is the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, sure, because you got all the thoughts in your head of how you want to formulate it, but then actually putting it to paper is the...
It's not even that.
Okay.
So I'm an odd duck in this situation in terms of, for me, the last thing I do is write it physically down. And before that, it's all in my head. The whole structure, exactly how I'm going to say it, is in my head. And then what I do is I write it down to memorize it. Then I don't need to practice it. I just I have it memorized. I don't need notes. I can preach without notes then.
Sure.
The physical writing it down is what cements it in my head, right?
Okay.
And so why I find that difficult is because when it's in my head, I can hear myself say it. Like I can see myself say it. I can actually picture myself and hear myself saying it. The minute I write it down, it becomes less than what it is in my head.
Right. Okay.
And I find that really difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's sure.
Yeah. So I with public speaking, with preaching, with all this sort of stuff, it may sound weird, but I can hear and see myself in my own head when I'm driving in the car, thinking up things. I can see and hear that happening. And that's, I don't think a lot of people can do. I don't know
I'm not sure.
what other people do. That's just for me. And so, because I'm a perfectionist, like as soon as I write it down, I go, I don't know if this is as good as I thought it was going to be.
Delete it all, rewrite it. I know. I know those feels. So we've talked about sort of what's challenging and what's difficult about public speaking and preaching and so on and so forth. But what is it that really draws you to it? Like what do you really enjoy about public speaking, or maybe not necessarily public speaking. Let's just stay with preaching in general.
Okay. Preaching, there's a couple of things that I love. There are things that I'm almost despise about it, and there's things I love about it. And it's probably important to have both. But the things I love about it, I love teaching people about God. That is just straight up, I love it.
Yeah.
It's great in any structure or form. I just enjoy it. I very much enjoy thinking deeply about scripture. Like
just
I
like reflecting
really
on
love
it, like really just reflecting on it.
I get excited about it when I have a new thought.
It's funny because when we were talking to Melody about it, we were just like oh, when we come up with like this like tune, or we come up with this melody or these lyrics or whatever, we're just like running up and down the hallway with excitement because we're just like so pumped. And you get the same
thing.
The same thing with
legitimately
messages.
the same thing. And I'm a verbal processor, so I have to tell somebody about it. Which works well for preaching.
I do the same thing. Yeah. Well, it works really well for preaching. Yeah.
But like I've got to tell someone before. And part of the working it out is telling them and them going, I don't quite get it, and going, oh, now I've got to refine this a lot more because it's not making sense. But I love that side of things. I truly love thinking about scripture in that way. Even like when I did the message for what's it called? Fast song. That we have.
Fast song that we have.
That's not our king.
That's not our king.
That I've just blanked
Stronger
on.
With Him?
No. Fill This Place.
Fill This Place, yep.
When I did the message for Fill This Place, I was studying 1 John 1 for that message and just started to connect all these dots, and I'm trying to tell people it, and no one cares but me. But I'm just like, oh my gosh, you don't understand. It's so well written, and it's like all these sort of things. And it's like, no one understands.
It's almost like we based the song off scripture.
Yeah, almost, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah. So I love that side of things. And obviously, I am a show pony. Like, I like getting up on stage and doing that. It's enjoyable. That's why I like drama. It's why I like public speaking.
Yeah,
I'm good at it, and I like it.
So you mentioned there was there's some really bad dislikes.
Yeah.
What walk us through what could that sort of mean?
So it's one of the things I always say to someone who wants to preach for the first time, that you'll often find what you preach on is what you're tested on. So when I preach something, I'm usually the week after going to be tested on it in some way or some form. So there's almost like a pushback from, I guess, the enemy, that when you proclaim something of God, he goes, I want to try and steal that from you. And so a lot of the time you do get a bit of like a spiritual battle going on and stuff afterwards. I do get like post-message blues, depression. And it takes a lot out of you. If you can think about like being in a party and like you're surrounded by people and you're telling a story and you're like boisterous and animated, it uses a lot of energy, right? You feel tired after a party. It's the same thing when you're doing public speaking. You get up there and you are a exaggerated version of yourself because you're projecting to the person at the end of the room. And that takes a lot of energy, and it actually takes some time to get that back. And if you're not projecting that much, that means that you're probably being kind of boring when you speak.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's hard to kind of like toe that line. And obviously, depending on the size of the congregation, also dictates how boisterous you are.
Yeah, of course.
But it can be absolutely exhausting.
Okay, so a while ago, May Creative, we got sort of asked to come up to the front of Riverton Baptist Church, and I was asked a couple of questions and played a couple of songs at the time. We'd only written, I think we've written like...
No, we'd written them all.
We'd written all. We just finished writing them all.
Yeah.
And we were sort of getting interviewed. And I remember beforehand, Sam gave me some tips about public speaking, which I thought were really helpful. So I thought, right, what are some good tips for someone out there that's trying to get better? Maybe it's not like standing in front of a church and doing it. Maybe it's like, maybe you're just like you're getting ready for like to stand in front and do a presentation at your work or your classroom or something like that. What's some tips on public speaking that help you be a bit more confident, be a bit more certain?
Okay. One of the biggest things, and I literally just did it then, one of the biggest things and issues with people public speaking for the first time is they don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're saying, and so they'll stop and go and and it becomes jarring and awkward. What you do in that position is, one, you need to practice over and over and over again whatever you're saying. It doesn't matter if it's a message or like whatever it is, you need to practice it over and over again. Now, I just said I didn't practice, but in my head I rehearse it over and over.
Yeah, that's right, because you're sitting there thinking about what you're going to say.
You need to know it inside and out, backwards and forwards. You need to know where you're going, because your mind doesn't work as fast as your mouth, and oftentimes if your mind is on autopilot because it knows where it's going, you're not going to stop and stutter and say and and all those sorts of things. So that's a big one. The other thing is that if you find that your mouth is going a mile a minute and you're not sure where you're going next, just pause. Just stop. It's better than saying or
Yeah, it's better than filling in with random noises to make it feel like you've been continuously talking.
Yes. And a pause is way more effective than most other things. It allows everyone to have that information sink in.
I mean, that's right. That's right. Even for the people listening. It gives them an opportunity to be like...
It's a break.
Yeah.
It's a break from the information. It's the break from the stories. It's a break from whatever, to allow that to sink in, and you get a chance to catch up with yourself. It allows you to look at your notes. If you look at your notes, it allows you to do a bunch of things. So instead of talking until you have to go, actually just taking a breath and relaxing is probably one of the best things you can do in most situations when you're public speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave me the same advice, and it's really helpful. And I feel like if you were to go back and watch the first podcast again, you'd probably catch me going a lot. And as progressively is going on, like I'm less and less like that because I'm really taking a moment just to pause and be like, what am I actually saying?
Yeah.
And it's really clear for everyone listening as well, because if you're saying and they're thinking about you going and
Yes.
and they're like, hang on, what's going on?
And the other thing is, if you don't know what you're saying or where you're going, a lot of the times you just put words in and you make things longer than they should be and more complicated than they should be.
And then people have to understand this really complicated sentence that could just be like, yes.
Or you just come off as a waffler.
Yeah, sure.
And you just waffle. And it's better to be shorter and concise and more to the point than it is to be super long, because people's attention spans are like not that great.
That's right, yeah.
So not waffling and just like not allowing yourself to your mouth to run away from you is one of the biggest things. Obviously, like eye contact as well is a massive thing when you're talking to people in a physical room. Just you don't have to look directly at them. You can look just slightly above their head and they still feel like you're looking at them. But just like looking around the room as much as possible, not having your head buried in your notes is a big thing as well.
So obviously standing in front of would you say you get a big connection with God from standing in front of the church presenting a sermon, or is it more of like the actual production, like the producing of it, sitting there pouring over the Bible?
Yeah. It's the pouring over more than the actual speaking's more the serving part. Like I want to help other people get to a place. Really what a message is to me, and I think where people often go wrong is when they stop thinking of it like this. A message is just going, this is what I've learnt this week.
Yeah.
Have a look.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. So that part of it is, guys, just have a look at what I've learnt this week.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can learn something from it too.
Yeah, that's right.
And the pouring over is the learning and the being excited about God and who He is and all that sort of stuff.
I've got one more question. So, what do you sort of wish for? Because in terms of like reaction from the congregation, because quite often you hear people being like, I went to the sermon the other day and it was for me. It really led me that week. Thank you so much for that. Like, really happy about that. What do you sort of hope? Is that what you kind of hope for, that people actually listen and hear and then react to it and make a choice and do something different? Or do you want people to more be like, this is, as you say, like, this is what I've learned, keep listening to me and keep learning, and we can figure it out together, sort of thing?
It kind of depends.
Okay.
It actually kind of depends, and there's a couple of things in it. When I go, this is what I've learned, it's because I'm young. And so telling people what to do is not a good idea for a young person.
Right, okay.
Telling people what I've learned,
life experience thing?
It just sounds arrogant.
Yeah, that's right. You just less life experience.
So, it's the same as saying I and you instead of saying we. It just sounds arrogant. So there's that side of things in terms of, being humble about it. What I want people to take away, I would love for someone to have something I say change their life in some way.
Yeah.
As a pastor who has preached regularly at a church, I know that after a while that just doesn't happen that often. I've got to be okay with that.
Yeah, okay.
and that I do get tuned out sometimes because the regularness of how many times I speak.
Right. Okay. So you feel like because people listen to you so much, you have less impact on them each week because you become routine as opposed to...
Yes. And so I hope that I plant a seed that either someone else can sprout or that will come back.
Yeah.
The hardest thing that I've had to learn is to not gauge how well I've done by how many people come up afterwards and say something to me.
Yeah, sure.
Because oftentimes people will be like, that was great. And you're like, why is that great?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, it was just great.
Yeah.
And, and it's just them being nice over...
Yeah, just to try to encourage you and
and that's lovely, but it gets really discouraging.
Yeah, sure.
This is not what they want.
Because, that's right. Because
Yeah, so...
Well, it's interesting when we're talking about the routine thing, because Pastor Andrew actually, he's a pastor at Riverton Baptist Church. He came up to us earlier and he just said, sometimes, even if you're, telling your church something over and over and over and over again, it just sometimes takes it from someone else's mouth for them to really understand and hear it.
Yeah.
So, we were talking about that whole routine thing. that really makes sense now.
Yes. And my parents have told me a number of times that they have said things to me over and over again, and then someone else has said the same thing, and I've been like, "That's really smart. I should do that."
Yeah, your parents are like, "Wait, what?"
So it's a regularness of the voice that sometimes breeds a bit of just like lethargic attitude towards the device or that thought, and that's okay. That's fine. It doesn't matter how good of a preacher I am. After a while, I get quote unquote boring if someone listens to me every week.
Right.
It's okay. It's part of it.
That's right. If you listen to the same song over and over and over again, you're probably eventually going to get bored of it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Just how it is.
Exactly. If we're talking, by the way, just coming back to what I hope to get, if we're talking about, say, a youth camp or something, because we met on a youth camp.
That's right. We did meet on a youth camp.
That's more somewhere where I hope something will happen for some of the kids, because they've never seen me before. I'm coming in, I'm walking into a space, I'm doing multiple messages, and I'm trying to get them to a place of a greater understanding with God. Yeah. And I also have more of an authority over them because they're younger than me as well. That's right,
yeah. So, and you can actually deliver from a point of life experience.
Yes, yeah. So it just depends on the situation.
Sure. Well, if anyone at home who's watching this has any questions for Sam about public speaking, people want to know anything, leave a comment. It's really good to be able to talk to the people who are watching. If you've got any questions, maybe we can address them, or we can contact you, or just reply. We do read all our messages.
Yep.
So
just ask questions. I'm happy to, if you always wanted to do a message or something, there's a lot to it. It can be really difficult to learn sometimes, but it's really rewarding when you do.
That's right. Yeah.
But there's a lot of skills to it, so learning takes experience.
And there's nothing to be like. There's no shame in being like, I kind of need help writing my sermon that I want to write for, maybe you're a youth leader and you just need a little bit of help writing a sermon and you just need some advice.
And I was terrible when I started, phenomenally bad.
Oh, I remember when first time on stage with a microphone. Yeah. Oh, I was so awkward. Yeah. I was on stage. I can't remember where I was playing, but I was playing somewhere, and I was on stage and I did not know what to say because I just didn't even think about it. I went up there. I was like, I'm going to do my songs and I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And I went up there and I was doing my songs. I wasn't stage fright or anything. I just genuinely didn't think about it at all. Yeah. I just think, you go up there, you do songs, you leave. I get up there and I'm in between songs. I'm like, oh, maybe I should say something. And so I'm just rambling totally rambling.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've come a long way in terms of public speaking now. But it's still challenging, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. When I started, because I'd done drama for a bit, and I think the first time I preached a full message, I was 17 or 18, right? And I thought, I've done public speaking, I've done drama, I've got this.
Yeah.
Write my message. Message was, it was okay, but it wasn't great.
That's what you expected,
of your first one. And I get up there, I'm like, I can totally control the room, and this will be totally fine. And it just went so wrong so quick, and just so awkward. I made the wrong jokes, all that sort of stuff. I was bad to begin with, and most people are bad to begin with, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. We have to start somewhere, and it's really good to be able to go to someone for advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a lot of people that I talked to. I watched a lot of preachers preach and tried to learn from them, and I found my own voice, and that's a big thing. Is finding your own voice.
Absolutely, finding your own who you are on stage.
Yes.
I'm sure if there's any teachers out there, they can somewhat connect with that, with the idea that you become like a persona in the classroom, at the front of a classroom, for example, as well as, if you're in drama, you become a character that you're reflecting, and it's not necessarily your like.
The most difficult thing with preaching is that unlike any other form of public speaking, you have to be the most real you can be.
That's right.
Because if you're not authentic, people can smell it a mile
away. Yeah, definitely.
And so it's really hard to learn how to be you and work out who you are, because you have to be authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can be a challenge, and it's something to learn and grow over time. It's not an immediate thing.
Anyway, we will probably wrap it up here.
Yep.
Thanks, Sam, for being our liaison person for talking about public speaking.
No worries.
It's been pretty good. Really informative. I think getting into your head a little bit helps understand like the process of how everything goes on. And once again, we really want to encourage you guys, if you have a question, leave a comment.
Yep. So this has been the Made Creative Podcast, your monthly podcast of creativeness. My name's Sam.
My name's Connor.
My name's Joel.
Joel's here.
Joel's here.
Yeah,
sorry, we forgot about Joel. Speak, Joel.
Speak, Joel.
I'm here still.
Yeah. Cool, we'll cut that out.
Everything you've had to say.
No, I'm kidding.
All right, awesome, guys.
Have a great week.
See ya. Good ending. What a good ending.